This is Florian Rusu, a veteran Moldovan army fighter whose story is an inexplicable phenomenon. Let's begin introducing you to this incredible story, my dear viewers. Rusu was a sergeant in the Moldovan army. He participated in the 1992 war against the separatist region of Transnistria. As you know, the Transnistrian separatists were regularly assisted by the Russian army, which led to the loss of this territory, where Russian troops were subsequently stationed. Rusu was an ordinary family man. He had a wife and 2 children and lived a normal, unremarkable life. He was a patriot of his country. From the very first day of the war, Florian joined the conflict. He was also captured by the Russians, but Rusu managed to escape from captivity. On July 21st, 1992, this conflict ended with Moldova's defeat, and Moldova was forced to sign a ceasefire agreement. Rusu was severely wounded on July 10th, at which point he was hospitalized. He spent 2 months in a coma in the hospital. When he woke up, the war was already over. This is when very interesting events began. When Rusu woke up, he unexpectedly started speaking in a strange language. This language was not Italian, English, Spanish, or any other European language. He had not forgotten Romanian. As you know, people in Moldova speak Romanian. When doctors asked Rusu what language he was speaking, Rusu said he had no idea what language it was, though he knew the meaning of every word. Doctors and Rusu's relatives were in shock, and most thought that Florian had developed serious psychological problems due to his injuries. These strange events continued for 3 months. During this time, a Spanish linguist, Victor Salgado, was invited to Rusu's home. Salgado visited Rusu and listened to him speak. He immediately noted that it was an ancient Inca language, specifically the Quechua language. This language is still spoken today in Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, and Argentina. According to current data, approximately 7 million people speak Quechua. Salgado knew that Florian Rusu had been wounded in the war and had been unconscious in the hospital for several months. Yet, he still asked the family members how he managed to learn this incredibly difficult language while in a comatose state. Rusu's son, Mihaitsa, told him that he had no idea what was going on. When Salgado began asking Florian questions, Florian told him that he vaguely remembered being in Peru, but could not recall any details. However, he somehow remembered being in Peru. This story even reached Moldovan officials. Rusu was also interrogated, but no one could figure anything out. Florian and his family continued their lives. At that time, Moldova was experiencing extreme hardship. It was quite difficult to find a job and simply support a family. On September 3rd, 1993, Rusu began working as a guard at a cement factory. Nothing particularly unusual was happening. Florian Rusu was left with one problem after his coma. He was frequently tormented by nightmarish dreams about the war, which gave him no rest. He also experienced unexpected anxieties and, though rarely, hallucinations. He often recounted dreams to his wife, as if he was ascending into the stratosphere while sitting in a capsule. He also had frequent dreams of commanding a group constructing a gigantic dam. All of this sounded quite strange. Psychologists attributed these dreams and hallucinations to Florian's participation in the war. However, the fact that he knew the Inca language after emerging from a coma was an inexplicable phenomenon for everyone. Yet, many were skeptical of Florian, believing he knew Quechua before the war. However, his family members insisted that he knew no other language besides Romanian and Russian. Against the backdrop of these events, Florian Rusu was dismissed from his job. According to the cement factory director, Florian's dismissal was due to him frequently falling asleep at work, which was indeed true. After this, Rusu became depressed, which further worsened his condition. In April 1994, Rusu disappeared and was sought for 3 days. He was nowhere to be found. The police and Florian's relatives began searching for him. He was found in a forest near the village of Terebna. Rusu was found by a tractor driver, but no one knows how or why he ended up so far from Chisinau, near this village. When the police began questioning Florian and asked him how he got there, Florian had no answer. He was silent, like a mute. He acted as if he were a sleepwalker. Naturally, the police could not arrest him since he had not broken the law. Florian's family members were offered to admit him to a psychiatric clinic, but they categorically refused. Specifically, Florian's wife even fought with the doctors and sent them away from their home. On a hot August day in 1994, Florian's daughter, Maya, heard a strange sound from her father's room at dawn. At this time, Florian's wife was not home. She was on night duty at work. When Maya approached the room door and quietly opened it to see what sound was coming from her father's room, no one was there. Maya went to the second floor of the house to check if her father was there. Maya called out to her father, but no one answered. Her father was not on the second floor either. She then went out into the yard and started searching for her father there, but without success. Maya woke up her brother Mihaitsa and told him that their father was not home. Mihaitsa thought he had left the house again and immediately called the police. Absolutely no trace of Florian could be found anywhere. His entire family, relatives, and the Chisinau police rejoined the search. They also called the Terebna police to check the same spot in the forest where Florian Rusu had been found several months earlier. The Terebna police began searching the forest, but without success. There was no trace of him anywhere. Rusu's search continued for 2 months, completely unsuccessfully. He seemed to have evaporated. His trail could not be found anywhere. The police questioned bus drivers, all railway personnel, and also at the airport. However, his name was not registered anywhere. The family thought Florian had committed suicide. Police have been searching Rusu for 2 months, but without success. Now you will hear something utterly astounding. In 1997, a call came from Argentina to the Moldovan Ministry of Internal Affairs. The person on the line was someone named Tiago. He stated that he was the head of a police department in the city of Mendoza and that they had apprehended a person 2 weeks prior who claimed to be from the country of Moldova. Tiago stated that this person had no identity documents whatsoever. He simply knew his name was Florian Rusu. The Moldovan colleagues told Tiago that they would call him back. 10 minutes later, from Moldova called to Argentina back and told Tiago that this person, Florian Rusu, was a Moldovan citizen who had disappeared from the Moldovan capital in 1994. The Argentinian did not understand what they were even talking about. In short, an investigation of archives began in Mendoza, checking Argentinian airports to see if this person's name and surname were registered anywhere. However, no information about Florian Rusu could be found anywhere. Florian was arrested for illegal border crossing. At that time, he was in prison in Mendoza. The Argentinian side requested information from the airports of Bolivia, Uruguay, and Paraguay to determine if Rusu had been in these countries. However, Florian Rusu's name and surname were not found in the airports of these countries either. The family already knew about Rusu and were eagerly awaiting to meet him. However, he was in prison at the time. For a certain period, Rusu did not answer questions. He remained silent and demanded to be returned to his homeland. The investigation continued, and Rusu's traces did not appear anywhere. Neither Moldova nor Argentina had any idea how this man ended up so far from Moldova in Argentina. Both sides were bewildered. Prison staff were also surprised that Rusu knew the Quechua language. One day, Rusu announced that he would tell everything. However, he immediately added that it would be incredibly difficult to believe. Florian said that he first disappeared in Moldova at dawn in 1994. However, he did not remember how. He vaguely remembered the following, as if he was in South America where colossal dams were being built. He also vaguely remembered that gigantic bridges were under construction. This sounded quite strange. He remembered the details of his second disappearance relatively well. Florian stated that he left home involuntarily, got into his car, and automatically drove towards the Codri forest. This forest was 50 kilometers from the Chisinau. Florian said that he went towards this forest completely involuntarily. When he entered the forest, he headed north, where there are small mountains. Then he woke up in an unknown territory, a desert-like place where it was quite cold. However, when he disappeared, it was August. As you know, when it is summer in Europe, it is winter in Argentina, and it is quite cold. He said that he had walked frozen for 2 hours, at which point he was noticed and helped by local residents. 5 days later, he was arrested. When Florian was asked what else he remembered, he began to describe being in a city that resembled New York, but was much more developed. Everything was very high-tech. There were large skyscrapers, and people were dressed strangely. He also stated that in this city, he saw huge bridges that connected to each other, high in the sky, where there was constant movement, but he could not understand what type of transport was moving on these bridges. He also said that he vaguely remembered speaking to someone who was the head of a space station. The bewildered Argentinian law enforcement officers listened to this in amazement. However, the majority did not believe his story and did not change his charges. As I said before, he was arrested for illegal border crossing. Rusu also said that diseases no longer existed and everyone was healthy. However, he did not remember specific moments of where he got this information. According to him, he was in a high-tech world that was sharply different from today's world. In 1998, Florian Rusu was put on a Buenos Aires-Moscow flight. He flew to Moscow and then from Moscow to Moldova. Vladimir Alexandrovich Chernobov was a Russian scientist, engineer, writer, and researcher of unknown and anomalous phenomena. Chernobov claimed that Rusu entered a portal where he managed to find himself in a parallel world that was 200 years more developed than ours. Florian Rusu died of a heart attack in 2007, taking with him this inexplicable phenomenon that had happened to him.